My name is Kate Alexander, and I'm breaking code silence. This is a movement by survivors of the cult-based troubled teen industry, where I spent 27 months of my teenage life. And I've been sick to my stomach since I watched the Paris Hilton documentary, This is Paris. It's on YouTube. She talks about her experience at Provo Canyon School, and I remembered that Provo Canyon School was what we were threatened with at the programs that I went to. So started doing a lot of research, and it is this tangled, convoluted web of an incestuous cult. And that's a big statement, right? So go look for yourself. Synanon, that started in 1958, gave birth to many programs like the Phoenix, CEDU, CEDU, Straight Inc., Life Spring, the Landmark Forum, which is still around. There are thousands of these programs, therapeutic boarding schools, military schools, boot camps, wilderness therapy, Christian schools that are actively holding American children against their will, restricting and censoring communication with the outside world, and causing a level of psychological trauma that is hard to articulate. It's taken me 11 years and hearing and reading hundreds of stories like mine to be able to even take this. So these places capitalize on terrified parents, and I don't blame my parents for any of this. They had no idea. If you tried to write home to your parents and say, "Get me the fuck out of here, this place is crazy," they would just take your letter, call your parents, and say, Caitlin's lying, she's being manipulative, and and then they would just keep me there longer, which would then get more of my parents' money. And they spent an extraordinary amount of money on these places. So do some research, but if this video can keep one kid out of these places, or help another survivor understand that what happened was so not okay, and not our fault, and not our parents' fault either. So yeah, where to start? Gonna skip a lot of backstory because fluff. 15 years old, I start lying, sneaking out of my house, manipulating my parents. And my mom was an alcoholic, and I stayed with her most of the time by choice. My dad had legal custody of me, but anyways, my mom threw up her hands, said, "Go stay with your dad." I went to go stay with my dad. He threw up his hands, and at the recommendation of a therapist, they hired an educational consultant, which is in the tangled web of cult shit. And they recommended my parents hire a Teen Escort Service to take me to treatment. So that meant a few days later, I was woken up at 4:00 in the morning by two strangers standing over my bed, and a woman told me to get up, come with them, and if I refuse, that they would put handcuffs on me. So, 15 years old, like, kind of the only logical explanation is kidnapping. So So I look out the window, my dad's car is gone, my stepmom's car is gone. I start yelling out for them. And I'll never fucking forget this lady. She looks me in the eye and she says, your dad's not here. He's not going to come and get you because he gave custody to us. So, yeah. So, I don't know where I'm going until we get to the gate at the Oakland airport. I see Salt Lake City, and then I'm like, going to treatment. Had a little different of an experience because I had tonsillitis and then got super sick when we got to Utah. So instead of going right to the program, they held me in a hotel room in Provo until I was better. I couldn't use the phone. I couldn't leave the hotel room. I didn't know if my parents knew where I was or knew that I was sick. I was super sick. I couldn't use the bathroom or shower without them watching me. And they wouldn't tell me where I was going. So finally I get better. They take me down to Duchesne, Utah to Second Nature Wilderness Therapy, where I spend September 2007 until December of 2007. And when you get to these places, they never tell you how long you're going to be there or what you need to do to move up to the next level. And they're all these levels and kind of points systems. So yeah, I was there for Halloween and Thanksgiving, and I saw a licensed therapist once a week, and then the rest of the time we spent with field staff in their mid to late 20s without any credentials. Those wilderness tip is like a halfway house to therapeutic boarding schools. And so I ended up going to Spring Ridge Academy, and it was early December. There's 4 phases. In phase 1, when you get there, you have to wear a bright red shirt at all times. You can't talk to any other phase 1s. You have to walk everywhere in a silent single file line. You don't have any phone calls with your parents. You can write letters, but they'll read them before they go out. And at SRA, one of the, they told you you could get out of here in 14 months. I was there for 24. If you were there for 14 months, it was because your parents couldn't pay for it. Or you got sent somewhere worse. So, anyways, SRA had these seminars that you had to go through. And the rule was you couldn't talk about them if you had been through them. So you didn't know what they were. And you knew that you could be asked to leave the seminar at any time. And you would see this happen. Girls would get asked to leave seminars and they walk out of the building and they just look destroyed. You're kind of like the leper of the community. And then sometimes people would get asked to leave and they would get dropped phases, consequented. So you knew that making it through these seminars was at least something you could do to get out of here. And the intimidation tactics in these things is insane. From the moment you walk in, they play this absurd song. It's the theme from 2001. And you have to be in your chair before the music stops. And if you're not there, then they kick you out. There's so many opportunities for you to get kicked out of this seminar just if you say something a certain way. There's in the seminars, it is highly based on Synanon. It was a cult founded in 1958. They did these group truth tellings, which is just a nicer way to say complete humiliation and emotional beratement. So in these seminars, there's you have to get up in front of the entire group and relive and dig up the worst traumas. And if you don't have a story that's bad enough or that seems to make you emotional enough, they'll keep Jeannie, the founder of Spring Ridge Academy, who also created these seminars with her ex-husband, David Gilcrease, who created the seminars for LifeSpring, a cult that was shut down. You can look up the Landmark Forum and still see David Gilcrease giving these fucking seminars. Or look up Resource Realizations. They're on LinkedIn. So anyways, they made these seminars. So she's like the devil. So she'd pry and pry and pry until it was like a forced confession, until you finally got to the version of your story that probably wasn't true for you, but that triggered something, that like a weakness that they could capitalize on. So mine was always my alcoholic mom, and they criminalized her. They actually, and this is a touchy story, but my mom was never told where I was when I got sent away. And the school kept convincing my dad and my stepmom that this is what they should do, because my mom did not agree. So they never told her. She ended up like going crazy, figured out I was in Arizona, moved to Arizona, still never saw me. Anyways, so seminars. So getting asked to leave seminars is pretty devastating. I want to tell a quick story because this is weird. So in the second one, you have to give yourself a name tag. So instead of your name, you give yourself the most shaming name tag you can think of. So the first time, mine was broken beyond repair. And I had to wear, I was 15, 16 at this point maybe, and I had to wear that during the seminar. And then you get to a point where they assign you a stretch, and this is a character. So the first time I went through, I was assigned Celine Dion, and another girl got Aretha Franklin, and there was the genie from Aladdin, and you go and you get ready, and you can put on these like donated costumes from Goodwill, and you come back. It's the first time you've worn makeup in like a million years. And when you come back in, the room is super dark and chairs are in a horseshoe, and one by one you get called up and they play your song, your stretch song. And so it starts with an upbeat song, like Gloria Estefan, Get On Your Feet. And so everyone's like having a good time. And the job is when the girls in the horseshoe think you're being authentic, your authentic self, they stand up. And so like if you didn't have a standing ovation at the end of your dance performance, you got asked to leave. And so in the middle of like your fast song, they switched the music and put on like the most emotional ballad that this artist has ever put out. And so Celine Dion was The Prayer. And I have like, go listen to that song. Like any 16-year-old girl would be like, what the fuck is this about? And so I was so confused. I'm like, I'll dance slower. Long story short, I got asked to leave because of that. So I had to leave still wearing my broken beyond repair name tag, because you don't get to take that off until the last day. And leaving a seminar meant that like my parents had to pay probably 3 or 4 months additional tuition to get me to the next seminar so that I could go through. So there are some really, really traumatic exercises that happen in those seminars that would make this video like way longer and more triggering than it needs to be. but I'm already at 15 minutes. So when you get asked to leave the seminars, or if you'd break any rule at the school, common punishment was S&S, silence and separation. It meant that you couldn't speak to anyone else. And if you broke, you never knew how long you were on it, but you knew that if you broke S&S, you'd be on it way longer, stay dropped, or like get work hours, which is child labor, where you have to go build a track or pull weeds. And like when I was at SRA, a girl was on S&S for a fucking year. For a year, they didn't let a 16-year-old girl talk to anyone. Friend of mine was on touch restriction for 6 months. I was lucky enough to not go through any physical abuse. I saw it happen. We had a very young girl at our school who had schizophrenia, and not a fucking person on campus was qualified, credentialed, or licensed to take care of her. She ended up getting sent somewhere else, and we didn't know where she went, but she was restrained and sedated, and then we never saw her again. So that's what would happen if you really disagreed. And I was given medication that I didn't know what it was for. I was prescribed an opioid for depression and anxiety, and I found out in math class because my teacher was in a plane crash, and they gave that to him in the burn unit. So that's fun. Like, they would tell you, not Zoloft, they would tell you sertraline. And you stand in this silent med line, and you take your meds, and they check under your tongue, and you show your cheeks, and holy shit, if you cheeked your meds, you got in so much trouble. Feedback group was one of the worst forms of this group truth tellings. It was a circle of the entire community. So like 75 girls, 20 staff members, everyone, and you just raise your hand, stand up, go stand another girl up in the circle, and let it rip. It could be, you could just be narking on them for, I don't know, not cleaning the sink, or it could be that, they kissed another girl on campus or did something on a visit, and then staff would have to intervene, right? And so you'd get punished in front of the entire school, and girls would get dropped, and they'd have to leave and go change their shirt and then come back in. And this just like the amount of shame to be stood up and called out for being homosexual or bisexual in front of 100 people, and then shamed for it. Like, fuck, man. So there's a lot more. Eventually, so at SRA, I got dropped from phase 3 to phase 1, and had to, restart, and I was put on SNS, because I developed feelings and a romantic relationship with another girl on campus. She was 18, so she could just sign herself out of school, and I had to restart. So that's been tough. You finally get to this point where, you also don't know when you're graduating. They tell you like a couple weeks before. So I had no idea when I was going to leave. I eventually did, and the school and your family kind of agree on a set of rules for when you go home. You can only talk to approved friends, no boyfriend, like everything is monitored. Social media is monitored. Text messages are monitored, like everything. And so I got home in December of 2009 and pretty quickly broke those rules. And like my parents went through this whole thing too, and they went through those seminars too, and they were fed the Kool-Aid as hard, if not harder, than I was. And so anyway, so the school had, strong opinions on what to do when I broke these rules. And I left home in April of 2010. So I moved into a sober living house. So I was home for 5 months, and then went back into a group living home. And then I turned 18, and thus begun 10 years of pain and confusion and a loneliness that I don't think I could ever articulate. Just this past year, 2019, was the first Christmas I had been home since 2009. My mom ended up killing herself in 2016. And I am disappointed that she doesn't get to hear this. So if you are out there and you went through one of these programs, you're not alone. Please speak up. This is so fucked up. Anyways, so sign the petition to shut down the Provo Canyon School. If you know anyone that's been through this, let them know that they're not alone and that we need their help. There are kids that are 8 years old at Provo Canyon, and that place is so much worse. So, anyways, there's my dirty laundry. Internet. Yeah, reach out. I'm here. I'm so fucking fired up and infuriated about all of this. Like, if you want to help, let me know. Yeah.